Good morning and welcome to the new edition of Dr. Lamba's Awakening Call. Change is always good. Journeys are always desirable provided they lead forward, not backward. Going on a journey is essentially a trip that explores. You are excited because you're going to see new things, explore new places, find out absolutely new things, ideas, culture, food, and so on. And it can be journey to knowledge. Similarly, change is always for the better. But that change, which is born out of an just desire just to take revenge, or a journey that goes backward, they are not signs of intelligence. They are signs of petty-minded attitudes. As a matter of fact, some such journeys can safely be said to be cutting off your nose to spite your face. And that is exactly what's happening in the United States, which has hopes to be the leader of the free world, and it has been a leader, though that leadership is now being challenged. There are some actions which Joe Biden is taking, which are only a result of anger, resentment, and shall I say jealousy at what President Trump had done. Now, jealousy by itself may not be bad, but when it results in something which is opposed to the ideals of the nation, then it is something abhorrent, hateful, detestable, despicable. If, for example, UN has decided, US has decided to rejoin UN's certain bodies which Trump had left. The first is the UN Human Rights Council. It's rejoining that. President Trump had said that it's not human rights, it's just an assemblage of the violators of human rights. If the council is called United Nations Human Rights Violators Council, it will be perfect. Second is, it is going to restart funding of United Nations refugee welfare. And the result is not likely to be a good one. It's not going to benefit USA and it's not going to be of any use to these two organizations. What it will do is it will give encouragement to the enemies of USA, to the enemies of human rights, to the opponents of freedom, and it would be a cause of pain for the democratic, freedom-loving people who have always looked up to USA as a role model. And not only that, at a time when the country is suffering from economic low, this shall be wastage of the American money. Now, if suppose, let's take up a hypothetical situation that China, Russia, Cuba, Iran, they start an organization and they celebrate their tyranny, their cruelty in the name of human rights. Would India join it? Definitely not. Would USA join it? It should not. But that's exactly what's happening. If an organization was to be there which claims to help the refugees, But it doesn't do so. It in fact spreads hatred, enmity. Should the United States fund it? The obvious answer to both these queries would be no. But if you put the word United Nations in front of these two groups, suddenly people like Joe Biden think they deserve US support. Why? Less than 2 months in the office. He has still 10 days to go before he completes 2 months. Biden has already rejoined United Nations Human Rights Council and is set to renew the funding of UNRWA. I had talked about UNRWA earlier when I had condemned Canada supporting it financially. Now, UNRWA is a specific agency for Palestinian refugees. And both these decisions of Joe Biden are dangerous. Bad they are, undoubtedly. They stink. These decisions insult the American taxpayer. They are harmful to the American interests. And of course, they have deadly consequences for all the freedom lovers. These actions speak of Biden's naive approach to the geopolitical situation, which is fast changing. And the way he is engaging with UN, which by itself has outlived its utility, shows his incapacity to take any decisive action. He's prioritizing good actions over results and reforms. That's what he says. But imagine an organization in which the unfree countries, practically the countries which are a by name for exploitation, suppression of human rights, and so on, you are not accomplishing anything. Not only that, but you're losing a lot. It was 2018, I remember, that I had sent a note to President Trump that US should withdraw from UN Human Rights Council and cut all the funding for UNRWA, and he discussed this note with his cabinet. The Secretary of State was so happy that he said we should do it right away because these actions were more than justified. And they made common sense. They still do. Now consider the Human Rights Council, which essentially doesn't even deserve the name of being called Human Rights Council. As I had written, that this council's membership is a who's who of the world communist dictatorships, exploitative socialist regimes, and run-of-mill tyrannies. Imagine Democratic Republic of Congo was elected as a member, though the record of Congo is a barbaric one. In human rights violation, Nigeria and Congo, these are the two countries which are the worst. And Congo was elected to Human Rights Council. And that pained me and I wrote this note. And then Venezuela, which is effectively destroying democracy all over the country, starving its own people. And you talk of human rights. And then Communist China, Cuba, and Putin's Russia, they were all given seats. And all these countries, whether it's Congo or Venezuela or China and Cuba and Russia, are now the leading members of the Human Rights Council. And Lo and behold, Saudi Arabia. The dictators who run these countries use the Human Rights Council to protect themselves from the criticism. Now, if since they are there in the council, any complaint against them is thrown in the garbage bin. It won't be acted upon. They point to their membership as a proof of their innocence and respectability. It's a passport, this membership, which enables them to destroy, suppress human rights. As a matter of fact, this is a carte blanche, a blank check, which gives them the freedom to do what they are doing, whether imprisoning Uyghurs, killing Christians as in Congo, and so on. And instead of going after the real human rights violators, abusers, the council targets only one country, essentially one country, that is Israel, and now number two is India. These two democratic countries, which have a completely independent judiciary, independent press, have been the targets of this council. And USA is going to promote this council. The council has a standing agenda to criticize Israel, India, and other such progressive countries which are a bulwark of democratic system. It routinely passes more resolutions against Israel, criticizes India even for when India is not doing anything but the demonstrations there and there's no repression, not even a banning of the demonstrations and the protests. And in case you count the resolutions passed against Israel and India are more than double in number than passed against North Korea, Iran, Syria, Saudi Arabia, China, Cuba, Venezuela combined. So those 7 countries combined are outdone by India and Israel as far as the criticism of Human Rights Council is concerned. So Human Rights Council has become a cesspool, a stinking cesspool of political bias. And by rejoining this broken body, Biden thinks that he's standing for the human rights? No. He is in fact sending a message, clear message, that the human rights do not matter. Now let's have the relief agency, Palestinian Relief Agency, UNRWA, which is supposed to support the Palestinian refugees, but it doesn't do that. It inflates the number of the refugees. It says that all Palestinians and their descendants living in other countries, even if they have citizenship in those countries, are refugees, instead of just those who were originally displaced more than 70 years back. Now, 70 years back, some people were displaced, accepted. They should have been given all the help. But their third generations, which are no longer living in Palestine, they can be living in Canada, they can be living in USA, they can be in Europe, anywhere. They can be occupying highest positions in society. But according to UNRWA, they are still the refugees and they need the help. Can anything be more ridiculous? Nowhere else in the world, even UNO considers such people to be refugees. And what does this result in? This feeds a perpetual grievance machine that treats millions like helpless victims, regardless of their circumstances. Now, imagine a professor in, say, in Harvard is deemed a refugee because his grandfather was asked to leave, or made to leave, or left Israel at that time. Like Human Rights Council, UNRWA's target is only Israel. It distributes textbooks which glorify jihad and refer to Israel as a Zionist occupation. If you look at the books, and I had read some of the books, they mention the grammar exercise includes sentences like jihad is one of the doors to paradise. Palestinians are launched in fighting the enemies. So this is not refugee relief. It's a pro-terrorist propaganda. It's teaching the children to hate Israel. It is creating hurdles in the Middle East peace process. And President Trump was absolutely right to stop spending taxpayers' money on this pernicious, hateful, detestable organization. Biden is going back. It's wrong to throw the American people's money down the drain. USA has been praised, and it's at its best when it pushes the UNO to advance freedom, to promote equality, to promote justice. These principles are enshrined in the Charter of the UN. But then let's admit UN has never lived up to this charter. This charter is only for the show. And President Biden's new actions in going backward to the UN will continue to fall short. Rejoining Human Rights Council, renewing funding for UNRWA is not going to help these organizations perform better. So, what do we do in this contest? The people, they can object to it, but would they object? No, because they're more concerned with fighting the pandemic, which is very normal. Senate and the House of Representatives are equally bad. So this is troika of evil today, which is ruling USA. And USA is making a mockery of human rights, refugee welfare, and in fact, all the efforts of UNO and USA are at institutions that and the countries which promote democracy, which promote human rights, which promote peace, which is a fundamental responsibility of UNO. Is this journey backward acceptable? It cannot be to any sensible being. But pray, who is sensible today in American system? And if there is somebody who listens to the sense, it's a bad day, a sad day in the glorious history of USA, and an indicator of the dark times to come. Think about it. Thank you.